Hey guys, okay, so those of you that have been watching our videos for a while now would know that I absolutely love any opportunity I can get to crack out a costume where it's going to help me illustrate or demonstrate a point within these videos. Now I thought this week I had a cracker of a costume idea. It's going to be a jester. Like I was going to rock this little hat here, I was going to wear my jingly little suit, I even had my juggling balls. It was going to be amazing. Yeah, unfortunately it didn't work out the way I anticipated. So disappointed. It just became like a comedy of errors. I mean, firstly, every time I got a glimpse of myself in the mirror rocking this thing back and forth as I started talking, I just started pissing myself laughing. I couldn't take myself seriously long enough to actually get the point I wanted to make across. The jingly bells, I ended up ripping them off the headpiece because they were ringing in my ear, distracting me the whole time. It was annoying. What got me in the end though? This thing right here. This hat is tight. Like, I think I only made it like 30 seconds or a minute into the video, and I was just so distracted by the fact that this tight thing was on my head, I couldn't focus again on getting the point across. So you know what? Kills me to say I'm super disappointed to say this, but I've had to abandon the costume. I know, tear sad, but it's okay. I'm still going to keep the costume here and the props here. I'm going to reference it as we go through because I do genuinely think that it's going to help me illustrate the point that I want to get across today. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, those of you that saw last week's video would know that we kind of started the ball rolling, started the conversation moving forward on the whole housing affordability crisis issue here within Brisbane. More specifically, we started by looking at what the new face, if you want to call it that, of this issue is. And we started looking at what some of the considerations are from a town planning perspective, which are kind of driving this issue forward or fueling this issue here locally within Brisbane. Now, in last week's video, I suggested that this week we were going to continue the conversation going. So this week, we're going to look at some of the town planning solutions and the pros and the cons that we have at our fingertips to play here. So let's start at the top. Let's focus on some of the broader sort of issues. And before we dive in, I should probably say, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert at this topic. I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to cover off all of the different solutions that are available there, or here I should say. My aim today is just to open your mind to what some of those solutions are, how they work and all of that sort of stuff, so that we can start to promote's the best way of saying it, a more constructive and positive conversation going forward on this whole topic. So let's start at the top. Last week I talked about the SEQ regional plan. Just to recap in super simple terms, back in 2005, the state government stepped in and they essentially put a pink blob over Brisbane, Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast around the middle suburbs, and they said that is where development is going to go going forward. We are not allowed to subdivide, in super simple terms, subdivide or do units or other developments outside of that pink blob. Now, when I'm editing the captions for this video, I will go back through and actually put in a screenshot of what that blob looks like for Brisbane, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But obviously the first solution or the first option or card we've got to play here is to increase the size of the blob. So basically free up some additional land, move it from the green into the pink so that we have more land at our disposal to be able to develop. That's where my little juggling balls come in here. We use green for the environment, blue for the economy, and pink for the social or societal type issues. So expanding that blob, great for society in terms of hitting those affordable housing goals. Not so great for the environment. So we're basically going to lose any big chunks of green corridors that we have left, which is going to be a disaster for biodiversity, a disaster for our fauna and all of that sort of stuff. So not great from an environmental perspective. Also not great from an economical perspective. So you think about it, providing infrastructure and facilities for a condensed blob comes with efficiencies. You start to expand out that blob and you start to lose those efficiencies and you start to waste more and more money. So I'd use a bus as an analogy, as an example I should say. So you got bus stop A, bus stop B. The bus is constantly going from A to B, A to B. You suddenly add in stop C and you've got to go A to B to C to B to A. You start to double the amount of time, and therefore to get the same frequency of service and level of service, you have to double the number of buses, double the number of bus drivers, all of that sort of stuff. So you basically spend a bucket load of extra money just to get a teeny tiny improvement in terms of housing affordability. So don't get me wrong, it's still a great option, it's still something that definitely needs to be explored, but it doesn't give you massive bang for your buck or wow impact, I guess. Next thing we come to, why don't we encourage people to develop some of those sites within the existing urban footprint, which are already nominated for development? So again, referencing back to the video I did last week, you would recall I said that I personally feel that there is a misconception out there. People think that developers are just like making it rain out there, and that is just not the reality. Yes, there is definitely some successful developers out there, but it is very difficult to get feasibilities to stack up on development sites. So if we want to encourage more development, we can do it one of two ways. The first way is you start to decrease the costs. So one option might be you suddenly, instead of charging $3,000 for a 1 into 2 lot subdivision for council fees, let's charge $1,000. Problem is then you need to go 3 staff down to 1 staff to assess those applications. When you go from 3 to 1, all of a sudden your timeframes go from 3 months to 9 months as a crude example. So that is not going to be great for the economic factor. So yes, you can reduce your costs there, but there is a trade-off which is a negative. Okay, another option, let's halve our infrastructure charges. The problem is it's kind of a steal from Peter to pay Paul kind of scenario. People have this image in their head of the Lord Mayor sitting there going, oh, infrastructure charges, that's a new pool for me, that's a new tennis court for me. Doesn't work that way. Things are operated a lot leaner than people appreciate. So yeah, if you're going to suddenly halve the infrastructure charges, where's the money going to come from to maintain those sewage treatment plants or those water treatment plants and the pump stations and all that sort of stuff? It's got to come from somewhere else. So is it going to come from the parks? Like, do we not need more park facilities? Or is it going to come from the buses? Like, do we just need to reduce the frequency of buses? Like, this money has got to come from somewhere. So it's not a great outcome to go and not a great solution, I should say, to go and reduce the developer costs in that way or that way going forward. Next option is you give people more bang for their buck. So you increase what people can get out of a development site, so it makes the properties more feasible in that regard. Now, one way of doing this, I guess, would be to increase the height. So instead of going 2 stories, you go 3 stories, or instead of 5 stories, you go 7 stories, whatever. Or another option might be to reduce the car parking rates. So this has been a big issue for us in the last few years. I think it's been about 3 years that these rules have been in place. Basically, however many years ago, council went in response to public backlash and increased the parking requirements for developments. We found that that slight increase suddenly meant that every development needed 1 extra car park. It's not just the extra car park that you need, it's the manoeuvring space required to get into that car park. So a car's got to enter in a forward gear, get into the car park, and then turn within 3 maneuvers and exit in forward gear. So it's a space for the car park plus the space to be able to get into that car park. That inevitably we found either wiped out a whole unit or at least a bedroom in a unit, which suddenly killed the feasibility for the developer. So yes, okay, we can suddenly increase the height or we can reduce the parking rates. That's going to help, you're not knocking down as many trees, it's going to stimulate the economy, but socially it ain't so good. So there is a reason we have these height limits and these car parking requirements and stuff in place. It's to manage the amenity impacts on the neighbours and the community and how the impacts essentially that these developments have on the surrounding residents. So yes, you can do that, but you need to consider the consequences from a society perspective. Next option, if we step down the hierarchy, is okay, let's free up some more land within that development footprint to allow for development and that sort of stuff. So upzone some LDR, low density residential zone properties to low to medium density residential, or character residential to low to medium density residential. You get the idea. Problem is, a bit of a history lesson for you guys. Back in 2005, Brisbane City Council did a massive public consultation process. What came out of that consultation process, which was all around how do you want to see your city develop and all that sort of stuff, was basically people want transit orientated development. So council went around and they identified where all the nodes were going to be, and then over the last 10, 15 years, however long it's been, they've gradually been upzoning those nodes via the neighbourhood plan process. So they've been going around going, okay, this is our next node, we've got some protected vegetation over here, we've got some flooding over here, we've got some character houses down here which are really cute, we want to retain. Okay, that's where the higher density is going to go. So they've gone through all of these areas, or almost all of these areas, and already put that effort into upzoning them and working out where the extra densities need to go. So if we were to go and try and expand on that work that's already been done, number one, it's going to cost a bucket load of money to go and do that mapping process. We're naturally going to wipe out some environmental stuff. We're going to have some impacts on the character housing and therefore our social fabric and all of that sort of stuff. It's just not as straightforward as everyone sort of thinks. Next option that everyone's been throwing at me lately is tiny houses. Let's create this new housing product that we haven't seen before. Again, not that simple. You get where I'm going here. There's all these issues that you need to consider. But essentially, if you go and put these tiny houses within existing developed areas, you end up with that granny flat concept, which I'll get to in a sec because it's so topical at the moment. But if you then go and get these bigger land parcels, so land holdings, let's say an emerging community site or a low density residential site, and you start putting a lot of tiny houses on there, or if you suddenly get a medium density residential site and do a lot of tiny units going up, Planning 101, one of the few things that's just stuck with me from uni so well, it's just stuck with me so well, is the fact that you cannot or should not have a lot of people in the same socioeconomic band in the same location. It just never ever works. We've all seen those scenarios or situations like UK, America. Melbourne, Sydney, where you have those high-rise towers where it's full of like housing commission or lower socioeconomic individuals, and the crime rate is just through the roof. You need to have people mixing and integrating to have society working and functioning in a nice sort of way, I guess you'd say. So yes, if we were to create these like caravan parks or these towers of low income sort of housing, it's going to backfire from a social perspective. It's not going to work. Now we come to the granny flats, the one that obviously, like I suggested, is super topical at the moment. When I first heard about this solution, I was like, damn, this is good. This is smart. I like this. However, ever since then, I've been reading the comments that came through on the post we put up 2 weeks ago, been talking to a few other people, and I'm like, you know what? I don't think it's really going to make any difference. Like, I don't think it's this silver bullet I was imagining it was going to be. Let me explain. So there's a lot of people in my sort of situation, principal place of residence, you're looking at it going, okay, capital growth, rental income. Capital growth, rental income. Like, it just doesn't stack up. Especially in situations like mine where I'm going to have to pay a lot of money to upgrade my house to get it to a modern sort of standard where it can be rented out, like putting those, what's it called, the restrictors on the windows to stop the windows from opening far enough for kids to fall out, all that extra stuff. So it just doesn't stack up when you look at those numbers. People like myself are going to go, yeah, I'm just going to take the capital growth, thank you very much. Like, it makes more business sense or more personal sense in terms of my goals and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, you're not going to be looking at the homeowners that live in, you're going to be looking at the investors. Looking at the investors, the ones that already have a property which can be easily converted to allow for that second household, they are the ones that are going to really capitalize here. But I'm going to suggest there's not a lot of those out there. The ones that are then going to go, hey, I want to actually build a new granny flat to allow me to take advantage of this opportunity, the numbers again just don't stack up in my mind. And I'm happy for people to prove me wrong here. This is not my area of expertise. I'm a town planner at the end of the day, not an accountant, not a economics type person. But when I look at it, I go, okay, let's imagine for an instance, you might get $400 a week for this granny flat. That's a lot of rent. I don't think you're gonna get that much, but let's just dream here. You're gonna get $400. You will lose at least half of that in personal income tax and expenses, like I said, in terms of upgrading the property, running the property, all of that sort of stuff to be able to tap into that rental income. So, okay, suddenly you're only making $200 a week. $200, these granny flats cost like what? 100 grand these days? I don't know. I'm just pulling a figure out of the top of my head, but 100 grand. Okay, so you're making $200 a week. That's 10 grand a year. 10 grand times 10 years equals 100 grand. It's going to take you 10 years before you break even on this investment. I don't know many investors out there that would see that as a good deal, especially when you keep in mind that we're going to still, in my opinion, be limited by things like the small lot rules. So you can't just go and stick that granny flat in the back corner away from the primary dwelling. You're going to have it 6 meters off the rear boundary, 1 meter off the side boundaries, maximum building length 25 meters, maximum site cover 50%. Generally speaking, they're the rules. So you're going to end up having to push the granny flat up next to the primary dwelling, which is naturally going to devalue or have an impact on the value of that primary dwelling in terms of the rental income you can get. So again, you go, okay, 10 years to break even, but then I'm going to lose money on the primary dwelling while I'm renting it out. Yeah, I don't know if that's making sense. Most investors, you're going to find go, I'm just going to park that money to the side, build it up a little bit more. That's going to become a deposit for my next investment property. Like, I'm going to get more bang for my buck that way. So yeah, I'm looking at it now and I'm like, it seemed like a great idea. And the other thing I was thinking was, there are so many properties, like I know in my area in particular, I live in the inner suburbs of Brisbane. My area in particular, there is a lot of unlawful granny flats out there. Like, so many people in my area have one dwelling upstairs and one dwelling downstairs. So that's just going to allow those people to legitimize what they're already doing, legitimize those existing uses. It's not going to bring new products or new dwellings to the market like we're sort of thinking. So yeah, I'm going, seemed great in theory, but I reckon maybe 10%, it's going to maybe 10% impact out there. I don't know. Again, I'm pulling figures out of my head here. But yeah, I don't think it's suddenly going to be this massive bonus. I mean, it's great for the environment because you're not whacking down a lot of trees. The infrastructure, a lot of it's already there, so you're not spreading out across the city. But the impact to the affordable housing, not so great. So anyway, this brings me to the whole jester costume point of this video here. What I was planning to do, and I won't even try it now because I'll absolutely fail at it, I realized juggling is not my forte when I tried it just before, and juggling with uneven dog balls, not going to work for me. But imagine I was juggling these balls here. Town planning is just like that. Town planning, you're constantly juggling all of the various different competing interests, trying to balance the environment with the economy, with the social aspects. Now, you're never going to get that absolute perfect balance. just totally unrealistic. Like, look at Canberra. That was a town planner's dream in terms of the respect, or in the respect that it was planned from day dot. And yet they still don't have that social draw card, that cohesion, that vibe, that fabric that people are drawn to. Yes, it may have worked from an environment and an economic perspective, but yeah, it's missing that little something. So you're never, as in the town planning world, going to get that perfect balance. However, you need to make sure that when favouring one solution, you don't completely allow another solution or another ball to drop out of circulation. So, for example, if we were to go that SEQ regional plan thing I mentioned in the beginning, that scenario, if we just totally focus on that, the environment would drop away. And once that's fallen out of the juggling act, it is very hard to pick that ball back up and get it back in circulation. So the point I'm trying to make here, the first point I'm trying to make, is that town planning is that juggling act. It's balancing. You can't just pick one solution and throw all your eggs in one basket and focus on it. You need to balance all of those different scenarios and pick all these different outcomes and do them at one time. Next point I want to make is I would suggest town planning is kind of like the jester. So the town planners are, instead of being out in the court and the entertaining everyone, they're kind of stuck behind in the back corridor waiting for, and I should probably clarify here, medieval enthusiasts, you're going to look at me and just go, you've got this totally wrong. I'm not being technically, historically correct here. I'm just using a bit of creative license, a bit of imagination to work with me here. But yeah, in this analogy or this example I'm trying to describe here, we've got the jester. They're not out in the court entertaining the peasants. They're stuck in the back corridors waiting for the nobleman or the king's henchman to give them the okay to go out and entertain. The king's henchman or the nobleman is sitting there just going, yeah, look, I know they're about to riot out there, the peasants, if they don't start getting some sort of entertainment, some joy. I know I should send the jester out, but I'm waiting for the king to give me the okay. Like, I'm scared he might fire me if I do something wrong, and I'm too scared to go out on a limb and just do what I think's right. I've got to wait for him to say it. Go up to the king that next level up, he's sitting there just counting his money. That's all he cares about. He's not even aware of the fact that these peasants are about to start rioting and are about to take away his money from him. Kind of like the situation we've got here. So town planners, being the jesters, have all of these tools that I just talked through, all those solutions at their disposal, ready to play. But the problem is we are influenced or driven by the political powers, let's just say. So the politicians out there, they're the ones that dictate the planning legislation, which ball is favoured at what time and all that sort of stuff, how many balls are in play at one time, all that sort of stuff. But the politicians, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, it's just in my personal opinion, it's a statement or just the reality of the situation or the system we work within. Politicians at the end of the day need to be somewhat focused on their re-election. So they need to keep one eye on, what do people think of me? Otherwise, if they don't get re-elected, they have no chance of getting their ideas off the ground and having any sort of impact on people. So yeah, the jester is that king's henchman or the nobleman, whatever you call him, who's sitting there going, look, I know I should be doing this, but I got to wait for my king to say, yes, I can do it before I go ahead and give him the okay, because I got to worry about being re-elected. The king is myself, you guys, everyone out there. So we, at the end of the day, and again, I don't mean this to be negative or this to be rude, I'm guilty of it, but we as society are too focused and fixated on using houses to symbolize the best word I can come up with right now, our wealth, our sense of achievement, who we are, all of that sort of thing. It's the great Australian dream to buy a house, all of that sort of stuff. I was actually doing some judging for HIA recently, and one of the judges that I was going around with, he said that people are too focused on keeping up with the Joneses. Everyone wants the 5-bedroom house, the big house. No one wants just the 2-bedroom house. No one wants to live within their means and be comfortable. Everyone's always pushing because it gives us a sense of achievement and worth and all of that sort of stuff. So I think at the end of the day, we as the public, as society, are too focused on growing our own personal portfolios, our own wealth, our own situation. And at the moment, there's not enough education, awareness, desire, driver, whatever word you want to use, to make us stop and look down and pay attention to the politicians or the noblemen or henchmen, whatever you want to call it. And as a result, the politicians are still kind of hand-tied in terms of what they can do to let the jesters go out and entertain the audience. So where am I going with this weird and wonderful analogy here? Basically, yes, we have the town planning solutions at our disposal, but there is no point fixating or focusing on those when the hierarchy above is holding us back. We need to focus more, in my personal opinion, focus more on educating people, having people, just the general public, understand this issue and want to change this issue. If we at the top, the kings, suddenly decide we want to make this change, then it can filter down to the next level, and then the council and the town planners out there can start to play these cards, these solutions that they have at their disposal. So yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to get across in today's video. Like I said, the first point is the fact that town planning is a balancing act. You're never going to get that perfect sort of balance happening, but you need to try and at least keep all the balls in circulation, because if one drops out, it's a pain in the backside to pick it back up and keep it going again. But there is no point fixating on these balls, these town planning solutions, if the hierarchy above is not working properly. So I think that's where we need to focus our attention and less on the nitty-gritty town planning sort of stuff. Anyway, enough rambling for me today. As I always say, until next time, thanks for watching.
For all you red tape lovers out there, I have one thing to say. Well, no, actually, I've got three. Number one, the advice provided in these videos is general in nature. It's not site-specific. You would be a silly Billy to go and make financial decisions based on this advice without first checking with the town planner. Don't be a silly Billy. Number two, Brisbane town planning is in no way linked to Brisbane City Council. The views expressed in these videos are my own, not council's. So if you don't like them, blame me, not council. Number three, what was my number three? Oh yeah, the views expressed in these videos are accurate at the time of recording. If you're watching this video back 10 years from now, the views may not be so accurate. That's all. Bye.